Hi friends, welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about writing with both hands. It might be a surprise to you, but the whole reason I started this YouTube channel and the namesake of this YouTube channel all goes back to ambidextrous training. My brother and I started this YouTube channel back in 2014. By that point we had already been doing ambidextrous training for about 2 years, and after his involvement ended, I decided to continue on with the element that was the most transformative for me personally, that being ambidextrous handwriting. And from that point forward, I went on and did a lot of stuff related to ambidextrous handwriting. I taught an experimental college class on ambidextrous handwriting. I spent about 3 years teaching an art class in federal prisons that involved ambidextrous handwriting and breathing techniques called creative brain training, and I wrote a book about that experience. And so ultimately that was the motivation of this channel's origin. So today I wanted to tell you a little bit about the radical results I initially experienced from this training, a rather peculiar phenomena that comes with ambidextrous training. And at the end of the video, we'll talk about how you might go about getting started with ambidextrous training. So to start off, when I first started my ambidextrous handwriting practice, I did so because I was failing college. I had less than a 1 GPA at one point. It was rather absurd. And so I was looking for ways to improve my performance academically. And I stumbled across this concept of brain training via ambidextrous skill development. And so I was doing all sorts of crazy exercises, juggling, bouncing golf balls off hammers, balancing on an Indo board, using mnemonic techniques to recite hundreds of digits of pi and the powers of 2. But the one thing that really stuck with me and I think had the most impact was my practice of ambidextrous handwriting. And when I reflect and think back as to what it was that actually changed, how did this make an impact on my life, it was my attention span. My attention span was radically transformed by this practice. And initially I thought it might be because, well, I'm engaging in 1 to 2 hours a day of ambidextrous handwriting, which is really hard. And because it's really hard and I'm spending so much time doing it, I'm building the endurance of my attention span. And I would say in part that might be true, but over the last few years, I've come to discover that the two brain hemispheres, there's not really a creative side and a logical side. Both sides of the brain hemisphere are involved in both types of thinking. But there is one attribute that is rather distinct between the two brain hemispheres, and that is in the way that they devote attention to the world. The left brain hemisphere, which controls your right hand, specializes in hyper-focused attention, short but extremely focused attention. The right brain hemisphere, which controls your left hand, specializes in sustained attention, in vigilant, alert attention. So I believe by training the left hand, I was able to unlock the dormant potential of the right hemisphere's attention span. Because the main difference I experienced when I went back to school after a summer of ambidextrous training was that I could now sit in class for 2 hours, take notes, and pay attention without any lapses, without any daydreaming. And so I was able to breeze through the remainder of college, studying less, taking notes by hand, and acing all my classes with incredible ease. And so you can imagine after 2 years of consistent results, I became really curious as to whether or not this would work for anyone else. And that's when I decided I needed to share these ideas and see if I could potentially help someone. And so I implore you to experiment with this idea and see if you have any results. But there's also another reason that is well documented. There's a phenomenon known as intermanual transfer of skill learning. And the premise of this phenomena is that as you train your non-dominant hand, your dominant hand will improve. There have been several studies looking at the transferability of intermanual transfer of skill learning and which direction the learning takes place. And although there are outliers, a majority of the evidence points to the direction of the dominant hand. So as you train your non-dominant hand, your dominant hand will improve, but as you train your dominant hand, your non-dominant hand doesn't improve. So I believe that this is a really interesting phenomenon and can be leveraged in all sorts of ways. It can be leveraged for penmanship, it can be leveraged for athletic endeavors, whatever sort of interests you might have that require a skill acquisition, can apply this ambidextrous method of practice in that direction. So let's talk a little bit about how you might embrace ambidextrous writing if you're interested. First is you already have a teacher. It's really close by. That teacher is your dominant hand. Whichever hand you have been writing with for a majority of your life, that hand will provide you with a ton of instruction on how to begin with the opposite hand. Now, I highly recommend that when you begin training the non-dominant hand, that you do so in a mirrored fashion. And doing it this way allows you to replicate the form of the opposite hand. The grip will be the same. The movement across the page can be the same. The letters and their construction is the same. It's just flipped. And so I've done this for 13 years now, and the left hand has never caught the right hand. The right hand has continued to outpace it. So initially, if you are following my advice and writing in mirror image, you will be struggling just to write letters, or just to do movement drills, or just the basics, holding the pen. All these sorts of things are going to be a huge struggle at the beginning. And so you can practice by writing the same letters over, or writing the alphabet, or writing letters in succession, or whatever it might be, repetitive tasks. But your ultimate goal should be, and I would highly suggest that you write long form. You want to write your thoughts down. You want to express ideas, write about your day, write about how things went, remind yourself how beautiful today is and that the universe is conspiring in your favor. You want to write long form because this is going to further stress the cognitive exercise it is to write by hand. And to this day, I maintain a journaling practice with my left hand, and I write about my day, and I write about how things are going, and I try to write little stories, and I try to write what I'm grateful for. And that practice has remained extremely beneficial to me. And so I hope that maybe it's beneficial for you too. But first and foremost, I think you would experience, if you truly devote 20 minutes a day, every single day. That's the most important part, is that you're doing it every single day. And you were to just sit down for, you probably won't be able to do 20 minutes at first, but start with 5, and then do 10 minutes a day, and then try to write a page a day. And if you can get to that point, and you're doing it every day, I can virtually guarantee that you're going to experience some changes in perception, some changes in sensation, changes in your sleep. You might be hungrier. You might feel a little bit more alert. You might feel a little bit more vigilant. You might have an elevated mood. I've seen it in tons of students, especially working in the prisons, that this can really change something about your hormonal makeup, your chemical makeup, that results in elevated mood, better sleep, all these things, better attention, more confidence, sense of creativity. It's truly a phenomenal practice.